Thank goodness for that. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay, what, first part about being welcoming, obviously, is, the call to order, which is what we'll do right now. But also is we need to go ahead and have with the general statute about notice of any kind of conflict. Does anyone on the committee have a conflict that you, or a perceived conflict of interest that you are aware of? Steve? Hearing none, I'll say that that's good to go. Most of this meeting was going to be about information only. We are part of the committee that works with the DEQ closely. Obviously, that's for that reason. So right now, I'm going to have information from stormwater. This is number one on the agenda by Mike Lawyer. The permitting overview, last time we went over a bunch of things that's already been done. So we're going to look at stormwater now. So if Mike is here to make that presentation. Good deal.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Mike Lawyer. I'm the Stormwater Program Supervisor with the Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources. Here today to provide just a general overview of our stormwater NPDES permitting. So under our stormwater programs, NPDES specifically, we have industrial program, which is required for regulated industrial activities, generally based on an SIC code, a standard industrial classification code, or other industrial activity type, and the presence of stormwater discharge outfall or multiple outfalls. NPDES construction, which is that permit coverage is required for construction activities with land disturbance of 1 acre or greater, as well as less than 1 acre of disturbance if it's part of a common plan of development, a larger common plan of development that exceeds 1 acre. And then finally, we have our MS4 program, which is required for phase 1 and phase 2 municipalities. Phase 1, basically like the larger municipalities, Raleigh, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and then phase 2, some of the smaller municipalities that own and operate a storm sewer system and within a U.S. Census designated urbanized area. So I'll go through each of these three in a little more detail. So under our industrial NPDES stormwater program, we have about 20 general permits, again, based on the industrial activity types, generally an SIC code. I've just got them listed here over the next couple of slides. They're generally issued on 5-year cycles and then have to be renewed. We have one, that the top one there, the NCG 020,000 for mining activities, is scheduled for renewal a little later this year. Some of the others will be renewed next year, and so on. Just continued listing of our industrial general permits. Again, various activities from landfills, ready-mix concrete plants, asphalt, treatment plants, etc. This should be the last of those set of general permits. And the other permit that's up for renewal this year is the NCG 19 or 190,000 for marinas and shipbuilding. Facilities that are not eligible for coverage under any of our general permits, their SIC code does not fit. They apply for an individual stormwater permit. We also, under our industrial stormwater program, we offer what's called a no exposure certification, which is essentially an exclusion from permitting. Applies to facilities that have stormwater discharges associated with regulated industrial activities, but all of their activities, products, materials, etc., are conducted indoors or under shelter, as the name implies, such that there's no exposure of stormwater. And that no exposure certification requires the completion of an annual self-recertification that the facility would complete. So just quickly regarding the permitting process for general permit coverage, we have notice of intent applications that are specific to each general permit type. That notice of intent is submitted to the central office, application reviewed for completeness, logged into our system, and then the appropriate regional office that covers the location is notified for any site visit or comments they may have. And we generally hold off on issuing permit coverage until we hear back from the regional office staff. And that's mainly just to ensure that they also get a chance to review the application for correctness, or say like the number of outfalls is correct, the industrial activity is correctly identified, that they've applied for the correct general permit. It also allows the regional office to sort of log that in their office so they know there's another permitted facility in their region for future compliance inspections. For an individual permit, we utilize EPA forms 1 and 2F that the applicant would complete, and again, follow a similar process of submitting that to the central office. One difference with the individual permits is that it does include a public notice and public comment period on the draft permit. And other agencies are notified, such as Wildlife Resources Commission, Public Water Supply with DWR, and any comments could be incorporated into the final permit. The no exposure certification, again, very similar process. They apply to the central office. We notify the regional office staff that covers that location, and that does require a site visit so that the regional staff can confirm eligibility. For our construction stormwater program, we have 2 general permits, the NCG 01 or 010,000 and the NCG 25 or 250,000. The difference in those, the NCG 01 is the primary one that is applied for and obtained. It applies to all land disturbance and construction projects that are subject to an erosion and sedimentation control plan under the SPCA, the Sedimentation Pollution Control Act. The NCG 25 applies to projects that are not subject to Daimler's sediment program, but are still subject to the Federal Clean Water Act. Some examples of those would be certain railroad projects, certain federal aviation or airport, projects at airports. Mulching operations is another example. And our current process for that, for someone to obtain coverage, is after they've received approval of an erosion and sedimentation control plan, either through the regional office or delegated local program, they submit an electronic notice of intent through our Laserfish repository and provide us the information that we may need that's in addition to what they provided for the erosion control plan, such as receiving water body classification, things like that. That application is reviewed within 1 to 3 business days and either approved or it can be rejected if the information they provided and uploaded is not consistent with the erosion control documentation. If it's rejected, they can obviously reapply, make the corrections that they need and reapply. And resubmittal, again, would be reviewed within 1 or 2 business days. Upon approval, the applicant is notified that it's been approved, and that notification is their initial invoice to pay their annual fee, which would then cover them for 12 months from issuance. If the project goes beyond 12 months, they would have to pay an annual renewal fee.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes, sir.
On this, I think I asked you this yesterday as well. The agriculture is exempt from that approval. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, Toby's not here today, is he?
He's not.
We have a MOU that we've been trying to get done for a long time with soil and water conservation, if it's to be deemed permitted, if they're working on a project to prevent this from happening.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any knowledge of how fast, or where is that in process now?
Yeah, so I did have an opportunity to speak with Toby other day, and my understanding is that That MOU or MOA has been drafted and is currently in the hands of our attorneys.
Yeah, that's the same thing that's been said for many months now. So I'd really like it if we could figure out a way to make that more practical or something to get to the Department of Agriculture so we can make this happen. This is particularly true with the amount of work that's going on with Western North Carolina because of Helene. We need that desperately. So we've been talking about this for over a year now, so I'd appreciate it if you'd let Toby know that and his lawyers.
Absolutely. One thing to note regarding kind of Western North Carolina that was impacted by Hurricane Helene. We did get approval. We had contacted EPA Region 4 about a process where like land disturbance or construction projects in those impacted areas could move forward and then apply for their erosion and sedimentation control plan within 30 days of starting the activity. You know, generally they have to have approval prior to starting, but in those impacted areas, they could start and then submit their erosion control plan within 30 days and get that plan approval, and then also follow through with obtaining their construction stormwater coverage. And again, this would be for non-agricultural projects.
Can you give us a copy of that letter?
I believe they were, I don't know if it's a letter, but yeah, whatever documentation we have, certainly.
That'd be
Yeah,
helpful.
that's interesting too, because there's a lot of angst about a lot of this about permitting, obviously, but one of them is the Corps last week actually said that they could be permitted afterwards the fact. So we've got to come up with something on that, but that's okay.
Follow up, please, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
You mentioned 30 days and you mentioned before that Region 4 EPA. So you're moving through the Region 4 with application, a 30-day piece. Question would be, has there been any changeover on the Region 4 acceptance of applications or slowdown of applications, particularly in Western North Carolina pieces that are involved? So does Region 4, with the changeover in the administration on the federal level, has there been any EPA adjustments? Have you seen any for any applicants going in that direction right now?
I have not. What I mentioned about communication with EPA was that we had put together this sort of proposal, we being Daimler, of allowing these Hurricane Helene impacted areas to move forward and then apply for erosional approval sort of after the fact. And it was basically just notifying and contacting EPA to see if they were okay with that. And they basically said that they understood and that made sense, and they agreed with that because of the impacts of the hurricane. But you're asking about applications that go directly to EPA?
No, when you just mentioned Region 4 and the permitting process and 30 days waiting for anything for permitting for Western North Carolina, having to go to Region 4.
They don't have to go to Region 4. They still come to the state
Right.
for erosion control approval and, if necessary, the construction stormwater coverage. They're not going to EPA Region 4 for that.
Okay. You just mentioned Region 4. It was just.
Right. It was just
Flag goes up with EPA and Region 4 and the changeovers.
Yeah, again, it was just communication with them that, hey, this is what we're proposing to kind of help out with these, the Western North Carolina impacted areas,
Gotcha.
and just kind of getting their blessing, if you will.
Sure.
That was it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Give me just a moment to note about forwarding that documentation. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think I got through that one. Just to just go back again, upon approval of their electronic notice of intent, they're notified, pay the initial invoice, and then once payment is processed, we then issue them a certificate of coverage. And then lastly, our MS4 program. It's mandated under the Federal Clean Water Act, delegated to North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality for implementation. It's required for, again, a municipality that owns and operates a municipal separate storm sewer system within a U.S. Census designated urbanized area. So that program can expand with each new census as other locations are determined to be an urbanized area. Like other permits, we issue the municipality their MS4 permit for a 5-year permit term. We currently don't offer a general permit option. They're all individual permits. But we have developed a baseline permit template that my MS4 coordinator uses when he's drafting either a new permit, if there's a newly designated area, or working on renewal of an existing MS4 permit. And that MS4 permitting program essentially requires the municipality to have what's called a stormwater management plan. There's requirements for annual reporting. The stormwater management plan has to contain enforceable best management practices, enforceable by the local government, and measurable goals. And then we do audit MS4s within their permit cycles. I think, a little more information on MS4s. So their stormwater management plan has to include 6 minimum control measures, which are listed here. Just a few of them: the public education and outreach, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site runoff controls, post-construction runoff controls, good housekeeping practices for municipal operations. It includes spill response, again, appropriate measures, stormwater control measures, vehicle and equipment maintenance, et cetera. So just quickly regarding numbers, current numbers, this is just a listing pulled out of our BIMS database from the other day. So you can see the numbers there. Our general permit certificates of coverage, a little over 3,300. Industrial individual permits, IPs, 158. No exposure certifications, a little over 1,200. Construction stormwater certificates of coverage, approximately 11,000. That one's as of February 11th. We update that list. We try to update that list once a month. So it was last updated early February. And then for MS4s, we have 113 presently. And just a quick note, everybody's probably aware by now, but stormwater fees were updated in October of 2023, that they were increased. For example, the obtaining coverage under either a construction or industrial stormwater general permit went from $100 to $120. The no exposure certification previously had no fee. It now has a one-time $250 fee. It's not a recurring annual fee. And just a quick note about the permitting transformation program that DEQ is heavily involved with and rolling out across all programs with the developers to have a more streamlined online process, application and permitting process, which would enable quicker submittals, reviews, and turnaround times, save paper, obviously, and also have more accessibility to the public. Currently, the construction stormwater is been the main thing that's been focused on within our division. We've done a couple of rounds of testing, and we have another round scheduled for later this month. Hopefully it'll be the final, with a projected go live in the Dynamics or Access DEQ system early to mid-April. Now that will be sort of phase 1 of that will be sort of a standalone process, similar to what we have now with Laserfish. It'll just be moved over into the dynamic system, and then ensuring that that's successful. Then phase 2 would be combining, essentially when a developer is submitting an erosion and sedimentation control plan to a regional office, they would also be applying for their construction stormwater coverage essentially at the same time with the same submittal. So one combined application, but resulting in both erosion control approval and coverage under the construction stormwater permit. Also, what's been in the works for a while now and moving through quite well is our state post-construction permitting process, getting that into dynamics as well. I don't have any current timelines to provide at this time, but the plan right now, there's multiple kind of aspects of the post-construction permitting process, from applying for a new permit to modifying a permit, transferring renewals, et cetera. As of now, we're looking at rolling out the process of just applying for a new post-construction permit, but then have the ability to modify that as necessary. And then the other transfers and renewals would get rolled out sometime later. And of course, all of our programs, including the industrial permitting, will be incorporated. But there's no known schedule for that at this time. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mike? Yes.
I'll just mention that we went through a significant review of stormwater management plan updates for local programs. And a couple of years ago,
Mhm.
Paul Clark, was it with someone else, excuse me, it wasn't Paul. But there is a model plan, stormwater management plan for everyone to use.
Mhm.
But that leads me to a different question. That was all done in Water Quality Committee, and I'm just curious if there's going to be a change in responsibilities of committees. My understanding was that the NPDES committee typically just heard special circumstances where there are unique specific permittee who needed a decision made that would not have any members that could potentially have conflict of interest on that committee. But all rulemaking related to NPDES would still be in the Water Quality Committee. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
There is always concern about the way the Clean Water Act is set up and who can be on the NPDES committee to hear variances. So very specific, this committee, those variances need to be heard by people who do not have a conflict of interest.
In this committee?
That really does not limit the full range of what the NPDES committee could do. And we've had like the low flow discharge rule that's come up. We had, I think Richard said we could put that in the NPDES committee because of workload. And I said, no, let's keep it with water quality because it is a rule for now. But we're going to have to look and see the load on the water quality committee. There's nothing to prohibit this committee from doing a number of things as a standing committee that it's not been doing. So no hard decisions on that yet. I do have a question. How many of our stormwater programs use general permits versus individual permits? 80% probably across the state of all kinds would probably use the general permit system on the stormwater side.
For industrial,
Yeah, or any classes. I didn't see any of those numbers up there. As far as percentages of who's using the general permits as a percentage of the
yeah, so the
total
numbers,
permits.
if I'm understanding your question, so the numbers there, so in industrial general permit, stormwater general permit certificates of coverage, again, well over 3,000 versus industrial stormwater individual permits, 158.
For individuals. And when we talk about wastewater as a point source and an NPDES permit from that, the numbers are even flipped on their head more. It's more toward the individual permits and not really a general permit.
I
Yeah.
think that's correct, but that's not my program.
Okay.
Question, Mr. Chairman, on the COCs there on the construction, 11,000 as of February. From when to when? So as to February, but when did you start? When was the start date?
So we started issuing certificates of coverage under the construction stormwater permit in 2019. So that number there, the approximately 11,000 would be active certificates of coverage. So it would not include those that have been terminated. where a project's been completed, they've released from their erosion control plan and terminate or rescind their certificate of coverage. There are quite a few on that list that are older projects, like probably even 2019, 2020, that they just haven't gone through the rescission or termination process. And we can't terminate their coverage without their request. But that's active certificates of coverage going back to 2019.
Okay. You seeing an influx in western North Carolina, the last 5 months? As part of that, a graph, can you show that it's starting to peak up?
I don't think we have that information that we can graph it like that. Yeah, that's just a total number, for all projects, whether it doesn't, I mean, you could feel it's a spreadsheet, so it can be filtered by county, or project type, project name, things like that, but that's not something that we typically, run numbers on.
Okay.
Just as a note for the committee, the NPDES, we have a committee here, but basically we're out in the community. It doesn't hurt us for us to know about issues, and that's one of the reasons that we're starting to meet. We want to make sure if somebody has something to talk to us about, a community member or something, it's very important, I think, to be able to understand what the system is. Just your question is exactly right. Sometimes it's over this way, it may be over that way, but it's all a part of this. So we do throw out the NPDES permits and we put them to the department, and that was a good solution because we're not expertise in that. But we should be able to have knowledge enough to be able to explain to our communities. As an example, I live in a rural area. When we did these new stormwater rules in fours, that was a very big concern of a lot of communities. They don't have those kind of expertise, so they had to start looking for another way to pay for it. So that's a big concern. And when I got on the EMC, that was probably the number one thing I was asked. Why does this happen? So I think it's good for us to, as a committee and as an EMC, to understand people's concerns. When it comes to money, when it comes to their own homes, when it comes to rural areas, as well as large communities, which a lot of them have the resources to hire somebody, but most of these little towns do not. So that's good. Any other questions for Mike? We appreciate the time. I would like to ask as chair and to ask the department to try to help us with this MOU with agriculture, because obviously I'm an agricultural person. I totally dispute the fact that agriculture can have a different definition. Ag is ag, and so I don't understand why we can't get that done. So I'm gonna hope that you'll understand why I'm asking that.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, the delegated programs to the different municipalities and whatnot, and we've been through this before, and that we saw that last time, how those programs get stratified or modified, or some of it's not even supported in state law or by rules sometimes. To your point, Mr. Chairman, we need to understand that because some of that does come before this commission. Some of it doesn't, but at a community level, it's very important we understand where the different programs are going. And we saw that quite a bit a few years ago, where the differences were and how some of the stormwater programs, the NPDES programs, were being administered locally. And even what people believe their requirements were locally.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just mention something of interest, that the PFAS coming up on the industrial users, POTWs and ASIUs, and there's 3 of us here that sit on that committee, and certainly in the industrial piece, 58, I would be interested in seeing where those industrials are in reference to river basins. That comment has come up, and geographically in North Carolina for industry. So that number 158 and what we're looking at is into the draft rulemaking this afternoon. Not today, but I would be interested in seeing that NPDES, how it affects different industries through in the river basin piece.
Yeah.
Geographically of each state.
We do have a active permits map that has, colored dots on it for whether it's an industrial stormwater permit or post-construction or no exposure. it does not include all the construction stormwater because the whole state would just be a big colored dot. But we do have that, and you can, of course, zoom in and some of the information that when they submit an application for permit coverage, that is information that asked for on the application is what water body are they discharging to, what river basin it's in.
Thank you.
Okay, let's, we're running out of time, so let's try to move it along a little faster. We've got, industrial permits from Karen Preston. You want to talk to us? It's the municipal unit supervisor. That'd be ours.
Thank you.
Okay.
Not too fast.
No, it was Mike Monaco.
Oh, excuse me.
Mine's out of date. That's
Okay,
my
well,
fault.
I'm bad when I read something. I should have just, I believe I'm better off when I wing it.
Yes, sir, Chair Yarber and the members. This is Mike Montebello. I'm the NPDES branch chief. I'm over the industrial, municipal, compliance and expedited, and the ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan unit. So we're bringing today 3 industrial permits that might be of interest to the committee, and also some information about municipal permits. So one of the permits that we'd like to bring in front of you is the Lear Corporation. I'm gonna go over a little bit of history on this. Just the first public notice was February of 2024. When we did that original public notice, we received over 1,000 comments, primarily focusing on PFAS parameters used in the permit, and then the generation and the discharge of PFAS from the facility. As a result of that, we revised and reissued a second draft and a public notice in November of 2024 and had a public hearing in December of 2024. And for anyone that doesn't know, Lear Corporation is an industrial facility with a direct discharge. They're near Kenansville, and they're involved in motor vehicle seat interior trim manufacturing. And this particular facility is responsible for knitting, weaving, dyeing, and finishing operations of synthetic fibers, just as a general thing. So we would expect to have a final decision typically within 90 days of a public hearing, which puts it in March 17th, 2025. That date's coming up soon. Currently, we're looking at the hearing officer's report. We're looking at public comments that we received during the public comment period. Just as a note, we did extend the public comment period to January 10th, 2025 to allow time because of the holidays. And then we're looking at all the supplemental material that was sent to us on the Lear permit. And at some point, we'll have some conclusion on the Lear permit, and I assume I would come back and I'll update the committee on that particular issue. The second permit I'd like to bring to you is Martin Marietta Materials, also known as Vanceboro Quarry. This is a permit that was originally issued in 2013 and was litigated for more than 10 years in the North Carolina courts. In September 2023, the North Carolina Supreme Court affirmed the issued NPDES permit, and the permit's in effect. Because permits are only valid and NPDES permit's valid for 5 years, the permit needed to be reissued. So this is part of the permit reissued process. We public noticed that permit in August of 2024 and had a public hearing in November of 2024. The public comments and concerns were mainly with the water quality standards and pH and biological integrity. There was also comments related to the aquifer and local drinking water. And public concern was about the 12 million gallon a day flow and potential impact on stream bank erosion and flooding downstream. So the Vanceboro Quarry is a limestone quarry, not currently in operation, and crushed limestone for use in construction industry. So that's the primary purpose of that. So as a result of the public notice, the hearing and the comments, we reissued that permit February 2025. The effective date of that permit is April of this year. with an expiration of March 30th, 2030. The permit included some revised monitoring requirements for some specific parameters, pH, total suspended solids, and turbidity, which is a measure of the suspended material in the discharge. There was some upstream and downstream monitoring added. And in addition, once discharging, the permit's required to do biological integrity every 2 years. Just as a note, that was included in the original permit from 2013. So that was not a new condition. The third permit that I'd like to bring to your attention is Baden Business Park, also known as Alcoa. The previous permit was renewed in 2017 and adjudicated by the Environmental Justice. There was a concerned citizens group in West Baden community, and that resulted in a May 2019 settlement. There were concerns about surrounding groundwater and stormwater contamination, including fluoride, cyanide, and trichloroethylene. So just as a note, this facility is a closed industrial facility, primarily responsible for aluminum forming, starting early 1900s, closed 2010, I think is the final date for the closure. So this is the materials that are coming off the site on a closed site. So some of the things about the permit renewal, DEQ staff met with the concerned citizens group in January of this year at their request. The owner of the facility implemented a pilot study to try to address fluoride removal for their outfall 005, which is in the Little Mountain Creek. And the results of that pilot study were very promising. Our next steps, we're looking to draft a permit. The key elements of that permit would be to include some of the pilot study requirements to be incorporated into the permit. We're looking at possible increased monitoring frequencies for some of the pollutants of concern and some other various parameters. And we're planning on scheduling a public hearing for this permit sometime in spring 2025. So those are the three industrial. You want me to, would you like to ask questions about the industrial before I move to municipal?
Yes, I do have a question.
I'll be happy to wait till the end if you prefer. So I just wondered about this one. Is it mostly the leachate that's the issue with the fluoride levels, the landfill leachate?
It's stormwater.
Just strictly stormwater. Okay. And, so industrial. Okay. Does the town of Baden have any physical connection to the facility with stormwater?
There's no domestic.
Separate entities.
Separate completely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, so then I'd like to move to the municipal permits for just a general status. The municipal permitting unit, just for your information, issued 35 NPDES permit renewals in 2024. And this equates to about 21.5% of the total permits. And this is important because when I first started here, our backlog was well over 30%. We need permits for 5 years. We need to make sure that we get permits issued on a 5-year schedule. And it's very important that we try to keep up with these permits. Also in 2024, the municipal permitting unit issued 6 major permit modifications, which required a public notice. Currently, we have the backlog for the municipal unit is about 14%. 5 permits are out on public notice, which should further reduce that backlog percentage. And where the municipal permitting staff is assigned permits all the way out through June 2025, and they're actively working with permittees to collect information they need. We're trying to get ahead of permit expirations so that permits don't sit expired for any extended length of time. And then there also is an ARPA unit, which is the American Rescue Plan Act unit. And out of that unit, they've issued 7 related NPDES permits. And there's 1 more in active development. The ARPA unit has been keeping up with all the expansions and the ARPA projects that might be out there. And they've been doing a good job. That's Nick Coco is the supervisor for that unit, and Karen Preston is the supervisor for the municipal permitting unit. And that's my update for the municipal permits, if you have any questions.
Any questions? Good work too, getting caught up like that.
Thank you.
Any questions? Hearing none, we're just about ready for the director's report. I did ask him to include something in the general permit for trout growers, and he said he would do that, and so that's be the only thing I'll be asking.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the trout farm permit, we've been keeping y'all apprised of that process over the course. We've had great involvement from the North Carolina Farm Bureau, the North Carolina Aquaculture Association. The Extension Service has also been a great help and had great input into our process as we work to develop a new permit for our trout farmers. In December 10th, we had come to pretty much a consensus permit with all the interested parties. We submitted that for comment to EPA. There's a 90-day comment period that it's just ended December on March 10th. We also put this permit out for public notice on January 22nd in North Carolina, and it closed in February, on February 25th. We're in the process of reviewing the comments. I'm actually meeting with staff on Friday for their thoughts with regards to the comments, and we're looking forward to get this permit issued in the near future.
Thank you for that.
I have no further comments, Mr. Chair.
It's from the committee. Hearing none, we are adjourned for being here today.